Yeah, this morning I'm joined by Jon Roberts, founder of Predictology website and professional gambler. John,
Yes, thanks, Simon. Really pleasure to be here.
so you're in the Philippines, and we'll get to why later on. But first of all, I'd just like to sort of say, so you're Jon Roberts. You give me some information about yourself. We met at the Smart Bash a couple of weeks
Hmm.
ago. You must have been the longest traveled to be there, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm just going by what you've told me. You've been a successful punter since 2010 and a
Mhm.
full-time punter since 2017. So can you just sort of, what is your game in a brief?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, from the accent, you'll know I'm from the UK. I had a long career in the digital marketing industry, which blended quite well from a betting perspective. At the time, it was very data driven, and a lot of time spent in Excel. And it was some, passion for me on the side, but I had a very good, enjoyable, and successful career, which is why I kept it sort of as a part time thing. But as we got to around about 2016, 2017, I felt the time was right to go full time. The Predictology site was also growing, and as technology was allowing us to develop more tools, which was enabling and improving my betting opportunities, and obviously the member base was growing as well.
Okay, so how long were you punting seriously before 2010?
I was talking to someone about this the other day. I would say I was not someone who has a traditional background into betting. No one in my family bet, wasn't exposed to it until probably I was about 20 years old. I think my earliest memory I can recall of a bet was Red Marauder in the 2001 Grand National. I think was the year when only four of the runners finished the race. Um, but over that sort of next 18 months, I was working in France for a year, got very close to a friend, a guy who's very much into his betting. We had quite a successful World Cup 2002. And that was around about that time I got introduced to Betfair, which had certainly, and all of this sort of combined to pique my interest further. And I discovered a site which some of the older listeners might recall as called Adrian Massey, which was just a gold mine for racing data and racing stats and everything. And that really sort of appealed to my analytical problem solving mind. So that's probably from around about 2004, 2005 is where I was more focused on horse racing, and I developed models, did well for a time, and edges would change and move. But it was sort of from probably around 2007, 2008 through to 10 where things started to get more serious for me. And it was actually more on the football side than the horse racing side, is where I was having more success and finding more edges in the market and finding it a little bit easier to get on as well.
Can you identify what happened that enabled you to leap to be a winning punter? I assume you were a losing punter when you first dipped your toe in.
Certainly, yeah. I think for me that it was the motivation was first of all not to lose money. So it was not necessarily I was thinking this would be a career or something that I would make a lot of money from, but it was a pastime that I enjoyed, and I figured I needed to get better at it just to ensure that I was at least going to break even with it. And that's why I've always taken a very data driven approach to it. It's the line of work that I had when I was in the corporate game. So I'm just very comfortable dealing with a lot of data, analyzing data, and looking for trends or things that people maybe overlook, and looking at things from a sort of slightly different angles. So that's what sort of drew me in, as it were.
Okay, so we're going to a lot more depth into what you do in a
Mm.
bit, but I want to go on to Predictology. So you launched the website in 2014. I looked at it yesterday. There's a lot of
Mm.
stuff on there. Um, can you explain to people that don't know about it or use it how it works, but once again in a condensed?
Yeah, sure. So the genesis of Predictology, it kind of sort of takes me back to those Adrian Massey days, in that if you look at a horse racing, there is a wealth of data that you can access and access quite freely when it comes to horse racing, and you can go as deep and as far down the rabbit hole as you wish with it. But from a football perspective, and I still think it's the case largely now, there is a huge amount of statistic websites, the Who Scores of this world, and other similar websites, but none of them actually brought the betting aspect into it or the profit and loss aspect into it. So you could see 100 different statistics about a game, but how do you know which of those statistics is actually a valuable insight or just a generic insight about a game, and how can you use that to inform your betting. So when I started Predictology, it was basically building a tool that I needed myself because I was doing a lot of this work in Excel or the kind of database platforms. And it actually just started off as a system builder. So we've got, at the time, I think we had about 250,000 matches, which I was able to access and bring to the database. And this had, you know, in-depth results for every match within those databases, including the betting odds associated across many markets. So by building that tool, we were able to then in a matter of seconds, you could put in various form filters, as a simplistic term. If Arsenal have lost the last two games, would it be profitable to back them to win the third game? And then you can do that interrogation of the database. And obviously you can go much more complex than that, but that's a simplified example of that.
Okay, so I was interested that you launched the site 6 years before. No, not 6 years. 3 years before you actually went full time as a punter.
Mhm.
What was the mindset behind that? Would you keep it to yourself for a bit longer?
Yeah, so I had it for a few years before 2014, and it was in pretty raw format. But over time, I was using developers to build out a tool that I felt was publicly usable and publicly available. Um, and I've always had stuff that works behind the scenes that's not released onto the platform, but would be specific to my approach. But I was also at the time, enjoying a very successful career, so it was something that was much more of a side project, and I was happy to sort of open up to the wider public, because 1,000 people could go onto that tool and we'll come up with 1,000 different ideas or different approaches. So it was never something that was going to be giving away an edge of mine immediately or anything like that.
Okay, now I've got to apologise to viewers and to you, because I'm of an era that a computer as big as the room was used to send out invoices. So I'm not very good on the technicalities of what you do. But
Yeah.
just looking at Predictology yesterday, you cover a staggering number of games. I mean, how do you
Mhm.
harvest all that data?
Yeah. So interestingly, so when we first launched the tool, it was pretty much just the system builder, and you were left to your own devices on that. So what we've done as technologies allow, so we've built a lot of algorithms and machine learning tools that sit above that data and allow us to interrogate it. So that helps in terms of my own model generation. But we also then share a number of those models for members. So if you're coming in and you're the type of person that wants to get into the weeds of it, then you can go into the system builder and start developing your own strategies that will work for you. Otherwise, we have sort of preset strategies that we've developed over the years that are profitable, and you can pick and choose for those to sort of suit your style, whether that you want to bet into.
Right. So you've got ready-made systems in there for somebody like me that
Yeah,
wouldn't be able to set their own game. Okay, I got you.
that's right.
So, but basically, is it right to say then that everything on Predictology has been built because you needed it, and it's just a byproduct of your professional betting?
Effectively, yeah. So, if something's been built on there, it's probably because I've used it at some point or needed it. We also have a great community around the product now, so we're regularly receiving requests and suggestions as well, and where possible, we'll build that in for people as well.
So have you sort of had contact with some real bright sparks that have impressed you, that have sort of
Yeah,
you sort of worked with?
yeah. Every so often we really do come across someone, and we've had private conversations, and that's we've helped each other out with stuff. I was actually talking to someone, one of our members who joined during 2020, and he's recently, through the profits he's made through Predictology, bought an apartment in Spain and is moving there next month. So it's really great to see that our tools are also being used in different ways that even I imagined.
Yeah, when I logged on yesterday, a pop-up came up and said there was 14,386 users. Well, assuming that's probably changed today, but
That's more for the free followers, but yeah, we send out a newsletter every day, which just has a couple of free tips in there. The actual paid membership base is a little bit smaller than that, naturally, but we do have a pretty healthy community. We have a Discord channel or community off the side of it, so we have a lot of members interacting with each other, sharing ideas with each other as well.
okay, I saw that obviously if for somebody like me, it filled me with sort of self-doubt that I wouldn't be able to use a lot of the site. It says you can create, and you've already talked about this a bit, you can create your own profitable betting strategies. But to do this, don't you already have to be a bit of a genius?
So no, but the way I've looked at it, and it's something that's evolved over time from what I guess was a very simple platform to a lot more complex. But what I always say to members, and we have sort of a launch pad and an onboarding process, that you don't have to be a master of all tools immediately. So it's understand, focusing on one area or one model, understanding what works for you. And on a regular basis, I'll have conversations with new members and sort of understand from them what's your risk profile, what's your betting bank, what type of bets do you prefer? Do you want to be laying? Do you want to be backing? Do you want to be focusing on goals? Do you want a high straight weight, or you want to go for long odds? And all of those things will help them sort of form a more custom approach that would fit that particular user. And I think it's important that people consider that and have realistic objectives about what they want to achieve from their betting, rather than just coming in and going, great, there's 35 models here, I can place 1,000 bets a day. That's not going to be practical for many people. So we try and help people understand what's right for them.
Okay, is it? I don't know, excuse me. I don't know if you're familiar with ProForm in the UK. It's a database
Yeah.
racing form. But so, if you have an idea, can you run it
Mhm.
through your computer to see if it would work, given past results? Is that
With the system builder side of the platform? Yes, you absolutely can. If we've got the data and the variables for you to run that, you can literally get the results back within 10 seconds, 15 seconds. So you can run, some of the leagues, we've got data going back to 2001. Some of the others are probably only going back to sort of 7 or 8 years, but you can run it at a league level, you can run it at a team level, or you can run it at, over a certain period and whatever form filters or aspects you want to apply to it. So yeah, it would work very similar to a pattern form, or I think there's another one, horse race based, which would be a similar concept.